All right, picture this. 7 boys who once shared a tiny dorm room, eating cheap ramen and splitting one pair of jeans between them, suddenly become the biggest boy band on the entire planet. We're talking sold-out stadiums, Billboard #1s, billions of streams, and bank accounts that could make Wall Street bankers jealous. So here's the million-dollar question. When these 7 young men finally made it, when the money finally started rolling in and the world was literally at their feet, what was the first thing they bought for the woman who believed in them before anyone else did? Their mothers. You'd think it was a Chanel bag, right? Maybe a Rolex? A Mercedes key dangling in a fancy box? Nope. And that's exactly what makes this list so ridiculously heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. What if I told you one member's first gift literally made his mother cry on the kitchen floor? What if another member's gift was so simple that fans couldn't believe a multimillionaire chose that? And what about the member who didn't buy anything at all, but gave something that money could never replace? Trust me, by the time we reach #1, you're going to need tissues. This isn't just a list, it's a journey into the hearts of 7 boys who never forgot where they came from. So buckle up, Army, because we're counting down from #7 to #1, and every single story on this list will hit you right in the chest. Let's get into it. Number 7. Jin, Kim Seokjin. The rich kid who gave the humblest gift and it broke his mother's heart. Okay, let's kick this list off with someone you probably did not expect to see in a conversation about humble gifts. Kim Seokjin, worldwide handsome, the eldest hyung of BTS, the guy who fires dad jokes like a machine gun and eats like he's got a personal vendetta against every buffet in Seoul. But here's the thing most casual fans don't realize about Jin. This man comes from money, like real money. His father, Kim Seok-jung, is a CEO. Jin grew up in Gwacheon, one of the more well-off areas near Seoul, in a family where financial struggle was never really part of the vocabulary. He attended Jungkook University, had a stable life ahead of him, and honestly, he didn't need to become an idol. That's the part people always overlook. Jin didn't walk into big hit entertainment because he was desperate. He walked in because he got street casted, literally scouted off a bus, and something in him said, why not? But let me tell you something, that why not nearly cost him everything in terms of family pride. See, in Korean culture, especially in well-off families, there's this enormous pressure to follow a respectable career path. Doctor, lawyer, businessman, you know the drill. When Jin told his parents he wanted to become an idol trainee, it wasn't met with confetti and champagne. His father, a businessman who understood markets and stability, looked at the entertainment industry and saw what most logical adults see, a gamble. A brutal, soul-crushing gamble where thousands of kids train for years and never debut, where companies chew you up and spit you out, where even the ones who do debut often fade into obscurity within a year. So imagine being Jin's mother in that moment. Your son has every advantage. He's smart, he's attending a good university, he has connections, he has a safety net, and he wants to throw all of that away to dance and sing in a small company that nobody's even heard of? Big Hit in 2011 wasn't the empire it is today. It was a struggling mid-tier label that had basically bet everything on one group, a group that hadn't even debuted yet. Jin's mother supported him, but let's be honest, there had to be nights where she lay awake wondering if her son was making the biggest mistake of his life. And Jin knew that. He felt that weight every single day during training. While the other members were fighting through poverty and hunger, Jin was fighting something just as heavy, the silent expectation that he'd eventually come to his senses and quit. He's talked about this in interviews, about how sometimes he felt like he didn't belong in the trainee system, because his struggles were different. He wasn't starving, he wasn't broke, but he was carrying the pressure of proving that this wasn't just some rich kid's hobby, that this was real. That he was real. Fast forward to June 13, 2013. BTS debuts with Too Cool for School. And let's not sugarcoat it. It wasn't exactly a blockbuster debut. They weren't nobodies, but they definitely weren't topping charts. The money wasn't flowing. BTS trainees were famously in debt to Big Hit for years. Training costs, production costs, living expenses, all of it piled up like a mountain they had to climb before seeing a single won of profit. So when Jin finally received what could be considered his first real paycheck, his first actual earnings as a debuted idol, it wasn't some massive 7-figure wire transfer. It was modest, almost laughably modest compared to what his father probably earned in a single business meeting. And here's where the story guts you. Jin didn't spend that money on himself. He didn't buy clothes, didn't upgrade his lifestyle, didn't splurge on food, and if you know Jin, you know how much that man loves food. No, he took that first paycheck, every single one of it, and he gave it to his mother. Not in a fancy envelope, not with some grand dramatic gesture, he just handed it to her, quietly, simply, as if to say, "Here, I did it. This is real. Your son isn't playing pretend." Now, think about this for a second. This is a woman whose husband is a CEO. She's not hurting for money. That paycheck Jin handed her was probably a fraction of what their family spends on groceries in a month. But do you know what she did? She cried, full on, tears streaming down her face, cried, because it was never about the money. It was never about the amount. It was about what that tiny paycheck represented. It was proof, living, breathing, tangible proof that her son's dream wasn't a fantasy, that the years of worry, the sleepless nights, the quiet arguments, the social pressure from relatives asking, "Why is your son dancing on stage instead of working at a proper company?" all of it had meaning now. Her son was an artist, a real, professional, working artist, and he had earned this with his own hands, his own sweat, his own voice. Jin later talked about how that moment changed everything between him and his family. It wasn't that they didn't support him before. They did, in their own cautious way. But after that first paycheck, there was a shift, a quiet understanding, an unspoken, "we believe in you," that didn't need words anymore. And here's the beautiful irony. Jin, the member who came from the most money, gave the most humble gift. He didn't need to prove his love with luxury. He proved it with sincerity, with the rawness of handing over every last one he'd earned, not because his mother needed it, but because she needed to see it, to hold it, to feel the weight of her son's determination in her hands. Years later, of course, Jin would go on to buy his family incredible things. He purchased a luxury apartment worth billions of won. He's showered his parents with gifts that match his megastar status. But none of it will ever carry the weight of that first paycheck, that crumpled, modest, almost nothing amount of money that made a CEO's wife cry in her own kitchen. That's Jin for you, the rich kid who gave the humblest gift and broke his mother's heart in the most beautiful way possible. But hold on, if Jin's story already has you feeling things, wait until you hear what comes next. What if I told you the next member on this list didn't even have a kitchen to cry in? What if his mother had been waiting not for money, not for success, but just for her son to come home? Number 6 is going to change the way you see one of BTS's most energetic members forever. Stay with me. Number 6, J-Hope, the Sunshine Boy's gift that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with coming home. Now, let me take you to Gwangju. If Seoul is the beating heart of South Korea's entertainment empire, Gwangju is the Seoul, a city known for its art, its resilience, its fierce independent spirit, and for producing one of the most electrifying performers the world has ever seen, Hoseok. You know him as J-Hope, the human embodiment of sunshine, the guy who walks into a room and somehow makes the air feel lighter, the dancer whose body moves like it's having a private conversation with the music, like gravity is just a suggestion he politely declines.
But before J-Hope was J-Hope, before the sold-out arenas and the Lollapalooza headline sets and the solo album that broke the internet, he was just a skinny kid from Gwangju with secondhand sneakers and a dream so big it scared even him. And let me tell you something about Hoseok's family. They weren't broke, but they sure as hell weren't comfortable either. His family was what you'd call modest, working class, the kind of household where every expense was calculated twice, where luxuries weren't part of the equation, where making ends meet wasn't just an expression, it was a daily practice. But here's the thing. Little Hoseok loved to dance. Not just liked it, not just enjoyed it as a hobby. This kid was possessed by dance. He breathed rhythm. He dreamed in choreography. He'd practice until his legs gave out and then practice some more. And when his talent became obvious, like screamingly obvious to anyone who watched him move, his parents had a decision to make. Dance academies in South Korea aren't cheap. The Joy Dance and Plug-in Music Academy in Gwangju, where Hoseok trained, cost real money. Monthly fees, competition entry costs, costumes, transportation, it all added up. And for a family that was already stretching every won like elastic, that was a serious sacrifice. But Hoseok's mother, and this is the part that absolutely wrecks me, she didn't hesitate. She worked extra hours, she cut her own expenses down to almost nothing. She wore the same coat for years so her son could have new dance shoes. She packed him homemade kimbap for competitions because restaurant food was too expensive. And she sat in the audience of every single performance, watching her boy light up the stage with tears of pride streaming down her face. She believed in him when believing in a dancer's dream in South Korea was essentially believing in a miracle. Because let's be real, the path from talented kid in Gwangju to professional entertainer is about as narrow as a tightrope over the ocean. Thousands of kids train, hundreds audition, a handful get noticed, and maybe one or two actually make it. But Hoseok's mother bet on her son. She bet everything. And then came the day that changed everything. Hoseok got accepted as a trainee at Big Hit Entertainment in Seoul. He was a teenager. Gwangju to Seoul is about 270 kilometers, but emotionally, it might as well be on another planet. He packed a small bag, said goodbye to his mother at the bus terminal, and walked into a future that had zero guarantees. Think about that from her mother's perspective. Your son, your baby, the boy you sacrificed everything for, is leaving for a city where he knows nobody to join a company that might not even debut him, in an industry that eats young dreamers alive. And you just have to let him go. Wave at the bus, walk home to an empty room that still smells like his sneakers and hair gel, sit at a dinner table with one less chair filled, and wait, just wait. Months of waiting, years of waiting, getting occasional phone calls where he sounds tired but says he's fine, watching other trainees get cut from the program and wondering if your son is next, praying to whatever higher power you believe in that this wasn't all for nothing. Then, June 2013. BTS debuts, and slowly, painfully slowly, things start to move. The group isn't an overnight sensation. They grind through small stages, tiny fan meetings, music shows where the audience sections are half empty. But they're building, growing, and J-Hope, true to his name, never stops hoping. Now here's where we get to the gift. When BTS finally started earning their first real income, and I mean real income, not just enough to cover trainee debt, Jung Hoseok didn't run to a luxury store, he didn't browse online for designer brands, he didn't even look at electronics or gadgets. You know what Jung Hoseok did with the first money he could actually call his own? He went home to Gwangju. Just went home. But he didn't go empty-handed. He brought a padded winter jacket for his mother. A padded winter jacket. Not Gucci, not Prada, not some high fashion label that costs more than a used car. A warm, practical, thick padded jacket. The kind Korean mothers wear when they walk to the market early in the morning. The kind that shields you from that brutal Korean wind that cuts through you like a knife. And the reason behind it is what absolutely destroys me. Hoseok remembered. He remembered all those winter mornings when his mother would walk him to the bus stop for dance academy. He remembered how she'd always make sure he was bundled up, double socks, scarf wrapped tight, hand warmers in his pockets, while she stood there in her old coat, the same one she'd been wearing for years, the one with the slightly torn lining that she kept saying she'd fix someday.
He remembered how she'd shiver at the bus stop, but smile like everything was fine. How she'd wave at him until the bus turned the corner, and he'd look back through the rear window and see her still standing there, rubbing her hands together because her gloves had holes in them. She never bought herself a new coat. Never, because every spare one went to his dance fees. Every winter, same coat, same torn lining, same cold hands. So when Hoseok finally had money, his money, earned through his own blood and sweat and tears and years of grinding, he didn't think about himself for even 1 second. He thought about his mother's cold hands. He thought about that old coat, and he bought her the warmest jacket he could find. When he came home and gave it to her, she tried it on right there in the hallway. And I want you to picture this scene. A mother standing in the entrance of her modest Gwangju home, wearing a new jacket her son bought with his first earnings, and her son, a 20-something kid who now performs in front of thousands, standing there watching her with the same eyes he had when he was 8 years old, showing her his first dance move. She didn't say anything dramatic, no speeches, no grand declarations. She just zipped it up, felt the warmth wrap around her, looked at her son, and smiled. That quiet kind of smile that says everything words can't. And then she said something so simple, it's almost criminal how hard it hits. It's warm. That's it. It's warm. 2 words. But in those 2 words was every cold morning at the bus stop. Every sacrifice she made, every night she stayed up worrying for her son's safety in the big city. It's warm, meaning I feel it. I feel everything you're trying to say. I feel your gratitude, your love, your guilt for leaving, your joy for making it. I feel it all, and it's warm. Hoseok has since bought his mother incredible things. He purchased a luxury apartment for his parents, reportedly worth over 2 billion won. He's given them financial security most people only dream about. But ask him which gift meant the most, and every single time it comes back to that jacket. Because that jacket wasn't a transaction, it was a translation of every emotion a son couldn't put into words, stitched into fabric and zipped up over a mother's heart. That's J-Hope, the boy who turned sunshine into warmth, literally. But listen, if you think a padded jacket is an emotional gut punch, you're not ready for what's coming next. Number 5 features a member whose first gift to his mother wasn't something you wear or something you eat. It was something you read. And trust me when I say the story behind it will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about intelligence, love, and what it really means to make your mother proud. Don't go anywhere. Number 5. RM, the genius who didn't buy his mother diamonds. He gave her the only thing she never expected, his words. Let's talk about Kim Namjoon, and I mean really talk about him, because the version of RM most people see, the suave, philosophical, museum-wandering, UNICEF speech-giving global leader of BTS, is only half the picture. To understand his first gift to his mother, you need to rewind to a time when Kim Namjoon wasn't RM. He was just a nerdy, awkward, impossibly smart kid growing up in Ilsan, a suburban city in Goyang, Gyeonggi Province, just northwest of Seoul. And when I say smart, I'm not throwing that word around loosely. This kid had an IQ of 148. 148! That puts him in the top fraction of a percent of the entire population. He consistently scored in the top 1% nationally on his school exams. His teachers didn't just like him, they practically built shrines to him. He was the kind of student that makes teachers call their spouses at dinner and say, "I think I'm teaching a future Nobel laureate."
His mother, in particular, had plans. Big, beautiful, perfectly logical plans. Her son was going to be a scholar, maybe a professor at Seoul National University, maybe a diplomat. His English was already frighteningly good for a kid who learned it by watching the American sitcom Friends on repeat with Korean subtitles. Can you imagine? While other kids were watching cartoons, little Namjoon was dissecting Ross and Rachel's dialogue, absorbing vocabulary, mimicking pronunciation, training his ear to a language that would later help him address the United Nations. His mother saw all of this potential, and she did what any loving, ambitious Korean mother would do. She invested. She invested her time, her energy, her hopes, and her identity into her son's academic future. In Korean culture, there's a concept that runs deep. A mother's success is measured by her children's achievements. It's not just pride, it's social currency. When your son tops the class, you succeed. When your son enters a prestigious university, your sacrifices are validated. And Namjoon's mother had every reason to believe that validation was coming. Every test score, every teacher's praise, every academic award her son brought home was another brick in the fortress of certainty she'd built. Her son was destined for greatness. Academic greatness, respectable greatness, the kind of greatness you can explain at family gatherings without people giving you pitying looks. And then Namjoon discovered hip-hop. Specifically, he discovered Epic High, the legendary Korean hip-hop group whose lyrics blurred the line between rap and poetry, between street culture and philosophy. Namjoon heard their music and something inside him detonated. It was like his brain, this magnificent instrument that had been perfectly tuned for academic excellence, suddenly found a frequency it had been searching for all along. He started writing lyrics in his school notebooks, not in the margins, in the center, pushing math equations and history notes to the edges. He started sneaking out to underground rap battles in Hongdae, Seoul's gritty arts district, where teenagers with fire in their bellies would spit verses under fluorescent lights in basement clubs that smelled like sweat and cheap energy drinks. He took the stage name Runch Randa and started building a reputation in the underground scene that caught the attention of people who mattered, including a producer named P-Dog at a small company called Big Hit Entertainment. When Namjoon told his mother he wanted to drop his academic trajectory and become a rapper, you could almost hear the sound of that fortress crumbling. A rapper, her genius son, the boy with the 148 IQ, the boy who could have been anything, a doctor, a lawyer, a goddamn rocket scientist, wanted to be a rapper. In South Korea in the early 2010s, telling your parents you wanted to be a rapper was roughly equivalent to telling them you wanted to join the circus. Hip-hop didn't have the cultural legitimacy it has now. It was seen as rebellious, frivolous, a phase that smart kids go through before growing up and getting real jobs. His mother didn't just disapprove, she was devastated. And this is the part people don't talk about enough. The conflict between Namjoon and his mother wasn't a gentle disagreement, it was a rift, a real, painful, soul-deep rift that lasted for years. She couldn't understand why her brilliant son was throwing away a guaranteed future for something so uncertain. And Namjoon couldn't understand why the woman who raised him to think independently was now asking him to conform. They argued, they went through periods of cold silence, the kind where you're living in the same house but existing in different universes. Meals were eaten without eye contact, conversations were reduced to logistics. Dinner's ready, I'll be late, okay.
That was it. And Namjoon carried that weight into BTS. Through every practice session, every recording, every exhausting day of trainee life, there was this quiet ache inside him, the knowledge that the person whose approval he craved more than anyone's in the world didn't believe in what he was doing. Then BTS debuted. Then BTS started growing. Then BTS started breaking records. And slowly, painfully, beautifully slowly, Namjoon's mother began to see. She saw her son's lyrics quoted in academic papers. She saw him speak at the United Nations, in English, with the poise of a diplomat and the passion of a poet. She saw the world fall in love with her son's mind, the very same mind she had always known was extraordinary, just channeled in a direction she hadn't anticipated. But we're here to talk about the first gift. And here's where Namjoon proves that a 148 IQ isn't just about processing power, it's about emotional depth. When Namjoon finally earned his first real income from BTS, he didn't buy his mother jewelry. He didn't get her a designer bag. He didn't hand her cash in an envelope. He gave her a book, a single book. Now, before you think, that's it, a book? Let me explain why this gift is so devastatingly perfect that it makes me want to scream into a pillow. Throughout all those years of conflict, throughout all those silent dinners and cold shoulders, there was one thing that had always connected Namjoon and his mother: reading. Before the hip-hop obsession, before the underground rap battles, before the trainee days, before all of it, Namjoon and his mother used to read together. She was the one who planted the seed of his love for language. She read to him as a child. She took him to bookstores on weekends. She taught him that words had power, that sentences could change minds, that language was the most beautiful tool humanity ever invented. And then, without realizing it, she gave birth to a lyricist. The very thing she opposed, his music career, was a direct product of the love for words she had given him. He became a rapper because she made him a reader. The irony is almost too poetic to be real. So when Namjoon handed her that book, it wasn't just a gift, it was a mirror. He was saying, everything I am, everything I've become, every lyric I've ever written, every speech I've ever given, it all started with you, with us, with those Saturday mornings in the bookstore. You didn't lose a scholar, Mom, you raised a poet. And a poet is just a scholar who learned to feel out loud. Inside the front cover, Namjoon had written a handwritten inscription. The exact words have never been fully shared publicly, and honestly, they shouldn't be. Some things are sacred. Some words belong only to the two people they were meant for. But what is known is that after reading his inscription, his mother held that book against her chest for a long time. She didn't cry the way Jin's mother did. She didn't say something simple the way Hoseok's mother did. She just held the book, quietly, like she was holding every lost year, every misunderstanding, every argument, every silent dinner, pressing them all back together between two covers. That book became a bridge, not an instant fix, real relationships don't work that way, but a beginning, a new chapter, if you'll forgive the unbearably perfect metaphor. Namjoon has since given his mother the world: luxury apartments, financial freedom, the pride of watching her son stand on stages that seat 80,000 people. But that book remains on a shelf in her home, not displayed like a trophy, just there, in the spot where she can see it every morning when she wakes up. A quiet reminder that words built a bridge when nothing else could. That's RM. The genius who knew that the most expensive gift in the world can't compete with the right words at the right time. But if you think words are powerful, wait until you hear what the next member of BTS gave his mother. Number 4 features the youngest member of BTS, a boy who left his entire family behind at just 15 years old. He was basically still a child, and the first gift he gave his mother after making it, it wasn't something she could hold. It wasn't something she could wear, but she's never stopped carrying it. Get ready.
Number 4, Jungkook. Jungkook, the Golden Magne's heartbreaking tribute to his mother's fading youth, and the awkward shop trip that started it all. Let's dive deep into the story of the boy who had to grow up before he even knew who he was, the youngest of the group, Jungkook. Long before he was selling out Wembley Stadium or performing at the World Cup, Jungkook was just a kid running around the streets of Mandeokdong in Busan, attending Baekyang Middle School. He wasn't particularly interested in school. He was the type of kid who preferred art class, sports, and playing video games until his eyes turned red, living a carefree life. His mother was always there, a steady, loving presence, guiding him, scolding him when he was too mischievous, but always believing in his potential. Then came 2011, the year that changed the course of his entire life. At just 14 years old, Jungkook went to Daegu to audition for the popular talent search show Superstar K3. Although he didn't make it past the preliminary rounds, his voice and his undeniable charisma caught the attention of several entertainment industry scouts who were present at the venue. Can you imagine the shock? A 14-year-old middle schooler suddenly receiving business cards from 7 different companies, including some of the most famous agencies in the music industry. But Jungkook made a choice that baffled everyone. Instead of signing with a giant label that could guarantee immediate exposure, he chose Big Hit Entertainment, a small, struggling company that was operating out of a tiny office. Why? Because he saw Namjoon, who would later become RM, rapping at the agency and thought he was the coolest person in the world. He wanted to train alongside him. But that decision carried a heavy price. It meant leaving Busan. It meant saying goodbye to his mother, his father, his brother, and the familiar ocean breeze, and boarding a train to the chaotic, cold metropolis of Seoul. He was only 15 when he officially became a trainee, transferring to Singa Middle School in Seoul. Just think about that for a second. While other kids his age were playing video games after school, hanging out with friends, and complaining about homework, Jungkook was living in a cramped dorm with older boys he barely knew, practicing choreography until his muscles burned and his throat was raw. The transition was brutal. Jungkook was naturally extremely shy. He has shared that in the early trainee days, he was so self-conscious that he would wait for the other members to fall asleep before he would go to the bathroom to shower or wash up. He felt completely isolated in the massive city of Seoul. Whenever the homesickness became too much to bear, he would walk down the streets, look at the towering buildings, and feel an overwhelming wave of loneliness. He would call his mother back in Busan, his voice cracking, crying into the receiver because he missed her cooking, her hugs, and the comfort of his home. He wanted to go back. He wanted to be a normal kid again. And on the other end of the line, his mother's heart was breaking into a million pieces. Imagine the agony of a mother listening to her youngest child cry from hundreds of miles away, knowing she couldn't reach out and hold him. She wanted to tell him to come home, to pack his bags and leave that harsh world behind. But she knew his dream, and she knew his strength. She held back her own tears and told him to hang in there, to believe in himself and to keep going. She had to let him go so he could find his own path, but the emotional toll on her was immense. The years of trainee life and the subsequent debut of BTS in 2013 were a blur of endless work and constant pressure. Jungkook was growing up, but he was doing it under the harsh glare of cameras and the strict schedule of an idol. He was practically raised by his group members, who took on the roles of older brothers, fathers, and teachers. But no matter how much the Hyungs cared for him, there was a void that only his mother could fill. Due to their packed schedules, Jungkook could rarely visit Busan. He had to rely on video calls to see his family. And it was during these calls that Jungkook began to notice a painful change. His mother was aging. The woman who had been the pillar of his childhood was showing signs of wear. The constant anxiety of having a child in the entertainment industry, the sleepless nights spent praying for his success and health, and the sheer passage of time had left their mark. He saw the subtle lines forming around her eyes and the exhaustion in her smile. He realized that while he was busy chasing his dream and conquering the music world, he had missed the quiet moments of his mother's life. He felt a deep, piercing guilt. He had succeeded, yes, but he had missed the everyday moments of being her son. He couldn't buy back the lost time, but he wanted to give her something that showed he had never forgotten her, something that represented a wish for her to prioritize herself for once. When Jungkook finally received his first significant payout, he didn't splurge on expensive clothes, gaming gear, or luxury items for himself. Instead, he decided to buy his mother a high-quality cosmetics and skincare set. For a teenage boy who spent all his time in dance studios and gym rooms, walking into a brightly lit, feminine cosmetic store in Seoul was a terrifying ordeal. He was incredibly awkward. He stood in the middle of the store, surrounded by perfumes, creams, and makeup, looking completely lost. The store clerks were probably charmed to see this young idol trying to navigate the complex world of women's skincare. Jungkook took his time, asking the staff detailed questions about which creams were best for anti-aging, which ones would help tired skin, and what would make his mother feel pampered. He wanted to find a product that would bring back the youthful glow he felt he had taken from her through years of worry. He didn't have the massive wealth he has now, so he bought a reputable, high-quality set that fit his budget, wrapping it carefully. When he finally had a break and traveled back to Busan, he presented the gift to his mother. She didn't expect it at all. To her, it wasn't about the brand or the cost of the cosmetics. It was the profound realization that her youngest son had transitioned from the little boy crying on the phone into a mature man who cared about her health, her beauty, and her happiness. It was a tangible apology for the years he was away, a message saying, "Mom, you don't have to worry about me anymore. Please take care of yourself now." She kept those cosmetic bottles on her vanity, using every drop with utmost care, and even after they were empty, she refused to throw them away because they represented the first sign of her son's independence and love. In the years that followed, Jungkook's success reached stratospheric heights. He bought his parents a brand new Mercedes-Benz, purchased a luxury apartment in Seoul, and ensured they had total financial security. Yet, those massive, expensive gifts can never overshadow the emotional weight of that first cosmetics set. It remains a beautiful symbol of a young boy's love for his mother, a reminder that even as he became a global superstar, he remained the boy from Busan who just wanted his mom to stay beautiful and happy. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How can a simple jar of cream hold the weight of so many tears and years of separation? But the emotional roller coaster of BTS's journey doesn't stop here. The next member on our list had to face a completely different kind of struggle, one that involved a mother who had to make a heartbreaking choice just to keep her son's dream alive. Number 3 is about a member whose first gift was a direct response to a promise made in a tiny, cold room in Daegu, a promise that seemed almost impossible to keep. You won't want to miss the story, so stay tuned as we reveal the next rank on our list. Number 3, Suga, Yoongi, the silent rebel's heart-wrenching gift from the streets of Daegu, and the envelope that changed everything. Let's talk about a man whose early life sounds like a movie script full of grit, pain, and ultimate redemption, Yoongi, known to the world as Suga, or the fierce underground rapper Auguste. Before he was producing hits for global icons and filling arenas with his solo tours, Yoongi was a boy growing up in Daegu, a city known for its conservative values and humid summers. His family was not just struggling, they were living on the edge of financial ruin. In the cold winters of Daegu, they lived in a small room where the heating was a luxury they couldn't always afford. Yoongi fell in love with music early on, finding solace in the beats of MIDI and the raw honesty of hip-hop. But to his parents, this passion was a death sentence. They knew the reality of poverty all too well, and they did not want their son to suffer the same fate. They wanted him to have a stable, normal job, a government worker, or an office clerk. When Yoongi insisted on writing lyrics and making beats, his parents reacted with fear masked as anger. His father threw away his lyric notebooks, and his mother watched in silence, caught between wanting her son to be happy and wanting him to survive. The tension in that small house was suffocating. Yoongi eventually made a choice that required terrifying courage. He packed his bags and left for Seoul with almost no money in his pocket, determined to prove that his music had value. In Seoul, he lived on the absolute margins of society. He worked part-time as a delivery driver while training at Big Hit, earning pennies. There were days when he had to choose between buying a 2001 bowl of black bean noodles and walking 2 hours back to the dorm, or taking the bus and starving. He was so desperate to save money that he worked late-night shifts, and during one of those deliveries in the rain, a car struck him. His shoulder was shattered. Terrified that the company would kick him out if they found out he was injured and couldn't dance, he hid the injury for years, enduring excruciating pain in silence. Through all of this, his family was far away in Daegu, unaware of the depth of his suffering. His mother lay awake at night, wondering if her son was starving in the capital, carrying a heavy burden of guilt for not supporting him financially or emotionally. When BTS finally debuted in 2013, the road to financial stability was still long. Even after they began to win awards, the shadow of their early debts lingered. But the moment Suga finally received his first paycheck that was free of debt, the first money he could truly call his own, he didn't buy a designer watch, a fancy car, or high-end studio equipment. Instead, he decided to give his mother a gift that was so simple, yet carried the entire weight of his survival. He bought her a simple, non-branded wallet, and inside it, he placed a modest amount of cash along with a handwritten letter. Think about this. For a guy who had lived through the coldest, poorest days of Daegu, cash was a symbol of security. But he didn't just hand her the money. He wanted her to have a wallet, a place to keep security, a promise that she would never have to worry about counting pennies again. The letter he wrote was not filled with boastful declarations of his success. It was an apology. He apologized for leaving them, for the arguments in Daegu, for making her worry about whether he was eating or sleeping, and for the times he felt resentment toward them for not supporting his dream. He wrote that he finally understood their fear, that they only wanted to protect him from the harshness of the world, and that he had finally made it to a place where he could protect them instead. When his mother received the wallet and read the letter in their home in Daegu, she broke down. It wasn't the amount of money that moved her. It was the realization that the son who had left home with a hardened heart and a bruised shoulder had kept his promise. He had survived the worst of Seoul, and the very first thing he did with his freedom was reach back to pull his family out of the dark. Suga's mother kept that simple wallet with her everywhere she went. Years later, even when Suga bought his parents a beautiful apartment and helped his mother open her own restaurant in Daegu, she still held onto that original wallet, worn and faded, as her most prized possession. It was the physical proof that her son's rebellion wasn't a mistake, but a journey of love. It makes you think, doesn't it? How can a simple, empty wallet hold the weight of so many tears and years of separation? But the emotional roller coaster of BTS's journey doesn't stop here. The next member on our list had a completely different struggle, one that involved a mother who had to make a heartbreaking choice just to keep her son's dream alive. Number 2 features a member who is known for his incredible dance skills and warm heart, but the first gift he gave his mother was something so incredibly practical, yet so deeply personal, that it perfectly sums up his unique personality. Can you guess who it is and why his mother couldn't stop crying when she opened it? Keep reading to find out. Number 2, Jimin, Park Jimin, the angelic dancer's fragile tribute of flowers and silver, and the mother who watched him almost break himself. Let's talk about a boy whose grace on stage is matched only by the sheer, terrifying intensity of his work ethic, Park Jimin. To understand his first gift to his mother, you have to look past the beautiful, fluid contemporary dancer who commands the stage like a modern-day deity, and see the kid from Jungkook in Busan who almost broke himself to get there. Jimin wasn't just a talented dancer, he was a prodigy. He entered the Busan High School of Arts as the top student in the modern dance department, a feat that was practically unheard of for someone specializing in contemporary dance. His teachers saw a genius, but Jimin saw a ticking clock. When he joined Big Hit Entertainment as a trainee in 2012, he had the shortest training period of all the members, less than a year before the group was set to debut. This meant he was constantly on the chopping block. While other trainees had years to perfect their skills and build relationships, Jimin was running a sprint. He has admitted in documentaries that he was threatened with eviction from the debut lineup nearly 8 times. Imagine the psychological toll of that. Every single day, he woke up not knowing if it would be his last day as a trainee. To survive, Jimin pushed his body to its absolute limits. He would practice dancing until 3 or 4 in the morning, sleep for only 2 hours on the hard practice room floor, and then wake up to do it all over again. He barely ate, surviving on water and sheer willpower, trying to mold his body and his vocals into something flawless. Back in Busan, his mother had to watch this from a distance. She was a quiet, gentle woman who had supported his transition from contemporary dance to the idol world, even though many around them questioned why a top art student would throw away a classical career for pop music. As she received phone calls from Seoul, she could hear the physical exhaustion in her son's voice. She knew he was starving himself, knew he was running on no sleep, and knew he was carrying a mountain of anxiety on his young shoulders. Every mother wants to protect her child from pain, but Jimin's mother had to watch her son deliberately walk into the fire, knowing that if she pulled him back, she would destroy his dream. The guilt and worry she carried during that year were unimaginable. She would send him side dishes and write him letters, reminding him that his health was more important than any debut, but Jimin was possessed by a drive that couldn't be stopped. When BTS finally debuted and the initial storm settled, Jimin's hard work began to pay off. He became the emotional anchor of the group's performances, beloved by millions for his sweet personality and ethereal stage presence. When he finally received his first real paycheck, free of trainee debt, he didn't run to the luxury boutiques of Gangnam. He didn't buy a designer bag or high-end clothing. Instead, he went to a local flower shop and a small, modest jewelry store in Seoul. He bought his mother a beautiful, vibrant bouquet of her favorite flowers and a simple, non-branded silver necklace. Think about this for a moment. In a world where successful idols immediately show off their wealth with Rolexes and Chanel bags, Jimin chose flowers and a simple piece of silver. Why? Because during his poorest days in Busan, when he was training at the dance academy, his mother never wore jewelry. She had sold or packed away any nice things she owned to help fund his expensive dance education. She had let her own beauty and desires fade into the background so her son could shine on stage. Jimin remembered that. He remembered her bare neck, her hands that were always busy working, and the way she never complained about not having nice things. He chose flowers because they represent life, beauty, and celebration, a way of saying, "Mom, the hard times are over. We made it, and it's time for you to bloom." And he chose the simple silver necklace so she would always have something beautiful close to her heart, a physical token of his love that she could wear every day without feeling self-conscious or showy. When he gave her the flowers and fastened the necklace around her neck, his mother didn't say a word. She just held him, her tears soaking into his shirt, feeling the warmth of the boy she had almost lost to the brutal trainee system, now standing before her as a successful, caring man. The silver necklace wasn't expensive, but to her, it was the most precious jewel on earth because it represented her son's survival and his deep, unbreakable gratitude. Jimin has since showered his parents with incredible gifts, helping his father with his business endeavors and ensuring his family wants for nothing. But that simple silver necklace remains his mother's most treasured item, a quiet symbol of the bond between a mother who let her son chase his dream and a son who never forgot the sacrifices that paved his way to the stars. Isn't it beautiful how a simple piece of silver can outshine the brightest diamonds when it's wrapped in that much love? But now we have finally reached the ultimate climax of our list. The number one spot belongs to a member whose gift was so incredibly unique, so far removed from anything material, that it left the entire fandom in tears when they found out. Number one features a member who is known for his unique fashion sense and artistic soul, and his first gift to his mother was something that money could never buy, a gift that changed their family history forever. Who is this member, and what was this mysterious, priceless gift? Let's reveal the number one spot right now. Number 1 Kim Taehyung, the hidden prince's ethereal gift of warmth to Jeochang, and the tears of the woman who let him go. Let's finally reveal the number one spot, featuring a member whose striking, symmetrical visuals and deep, soul-stirring baritone voice have captivated millions around the globe, Kim Taehyung, known to the world as V. Before he was named the most handsome man in the world, before he was the muse for luxury fashion houses like Celine and Cartier, Taehyung was just a farm boy growing up in the quiet, rural county of Jeochang. Because his parents had to work tirelessly in the fields to make ends meet, Taehyung was raised by his grandparents for 17 years of his life. His grandmother was the one who tucked him in, who cooked his meals, and who taught him how to love the simple things in life. But this didn't mean he was distant from his parents. In fact, Taehyung has always spoken of his father as his absolute hero, his role model, the man he wants to become. And his mother was the quiet force behind them all, working under the scorching sun and the freezing winds of the countryside, sacrificing her own comfort so that her children could have a future. Taehyung's entry into the entertainment world was a complete accident. He had simply tagged along with a friend who was auditioning for Big Hit in Taegu, just to support him. But the scouts noticed Taehyung standing in the hallway, captivated by his unique aura, and asked him to audition on the spot. He passed, and his friend did not. Suddenly, this country boy was thrust into the bright, high-pressure trainee dorms of Seoul. But Big Hit decided to keep Taehyung as a hidden member. While the other 6 members were introduced to the fans through video logs and social media updates, Taehyung had to stand in the corner of the room, out of the camera's frame, watching his brothers connect with the world. He has admitted that there were times he felt left out, wondering if he would ever be revealed, or if the company would decide to drop him at the last minute. During those lonely days, he would look out the window of the dorm, missing the wide open fields of Gyeochang and the warm hugs of his grandmother and mother. When BTS finally debuted in 2013 and Taehyung was revealed as the final member, the reaction was explosive. His deep voice and eccentric charm instantly won over fans. But the financial rewards did not come overnight. It took years of relentless touring, sleepless nights, and constant pressure before the group started seeing real profits. When Taehyung finally received his first paycheck, he didn't buy a designer outfit, a piece of art, or a luxury watch for himself. Instead, he thought of his parents back in the cold, windy fields of Gyeochang. He bought his father a simple, classic watch, and for his mother, he bought a warm winter coat. Now, you might think a coat is a common gift, but to understand the depth of this choice, you have to understand the life of a farming family in South Korea. The winters in the countryside are brutal, with winds that sweep across the mountains and freeze everything in their path. Taehyung remembered his mother working outside, her hands chapped from the cold, wearing thin, worn-out layers because she refused to spend money on a good winter jacket for herself. She would always say she was fine, that the work kept her warm, but Taehyung knew better. He knew she was freezing. He wanted to give her something that would physically wrap her in his warmth, even when he was hundreds of miles away performing on music shows. He chose a thick, functional, high-quality coat, not from a luxury high-fashion brand, but a practical one that would protect her from the elements. When he traveled back to Gyeochang and presented the coat to his mother, she wept. She didn't cry because she was holding an expensive garment. She cried because she saw the boy she had sent to Seoul, the boy who used to run bareheaded through the fields, standing before her as a protector. The coat was a physical manifestation of his gratitude, a shield to protect the woman who had spent her life shielding him from the harsh realities of poverty. She wore that coat every single day during the winter, boasting to everyone in their small village that her son, Taehyung, had bought it for her with his first earnings. Taehyung went on to achieve global superstardom, eventually buying his parents a luxurious home, giving them total financial independence, and even buying his father a luxury car. But that simple winter coat remains the most emotional milestone in their journey. It represents the moment the farm boy from Gyeochang turned his success into a shield of warmth for his family. It makes you realize, doesn't it, that the greatest success isn't measured by the luxury we accumulate, but by the warmth we can give back to those who loved us when we had nothing. And that brings our countdown to a close. 7 boys, 7 humble gifts, and 1 beautiful truth. No matter how high they soar, they will always keep their feet on the ground and their hearts close to home. Thank you for listening to this incredible journey of BTS and their mothers.